part of Donald Trump's foreign policy, it was a disaster.
He's out of his depth. He's out of his depth.
Out of my depth? Okay. The analysis is childlike to defend Trump, right? Well, there were no wars, right? Wars don't just come out of nowhere. There's a buildup for how these things happen.
So what he just did is he said the conditions for the largest slaughter of Jews since 1945 were created by President Trump.
A lot of the stuff that he did during his presidency was kind of a build-up to the frustrations that would obviously come out on October 7th and that horrible terrorist attack.
It's because nobody fears the senile old man in the White House who talks to dead people and thinks his wife is his sister. That's why the world is on fire.
The question I want to ask you, is a question I can't ask you on YouTube, which is about January the 6th and everything that happened around that. Right. Do you believe the 2020 election was stolen?
So to say that he went along with the peaceful transfer of power is just a lie.
Well, he did, because he left the White House.
Yes, after he failed to steal the election.
Gentlemen, welcome to the debate. Seb, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, we want to focus exclusively on the election that's upcoming, and one of the things we agreed before is that both of you get a chance to set out a positive case for your candidate, something that we never hear anymore because everyone just criticizes the other person. So given that Biden is the incumbent, Stephen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah.
Why is he good?
I think that Biden is a good president because I think that he's shown that he's willing to defend and strengthen our institutions. I think that the United States is only as strong as the institutions that we have. You can have parchment guarantees from constitutions that say you're afforded XYZ rights, or you're guaranteed in the United States to be able to do some particular things, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a government telling you that the food is safe, or this medicine is safe, or your car is not going to explode at the end of the day, I think that none of those things actually matter, the parchment guarantees. So I think that Biden has done a really good job at kind of reaffirming our institutions, whereas I feel like Trump was a bit more negative towards them. The second thing is I think Biden has done a really good job at being able to actually bring different people in Congress together to pass legislation. I think that bipartisanship is really important right now, considering how divided we are. You've got things that Trump said about infrastructure for 4 years that never got done. The closest we got to infrastructure building in the United States under Trump are tariffs, which are basically just taxes on our own citizens, whereas Biden was able to pass the IRA and the CHIPS Act, which both have fostered a ton of new manufacturing that's been happening in the United States, which I think is really cool because we're finally building stuff again. And then I think that the foreign policy under Biden, I think that our aims right now are a lot more noble than they were under Trump. I think that regardless of your feelings, our participation with supporting Ukraine against Russia or supporting Israel against the situation in the Middle East is a lot more defensible than endless drone wars that we're trying to hide in Yemen, fighting in Syria, whatever other, the photo opportunities with North Korea, the back and forth with Iran, whatever kind of mixed bag of undermining the United States Trump was involved in when it came to U.S. foreign policy under him. So those would be my three big ones. I think defensive institutions, ability to bipartisanly pass legislation, and then more noble foreign policy aims.
Perfect. I will come back to you to probe at some of those things. Seb, what's your case for Trump?
He loves America. He doesn't hate America. It's really that simple. And he understands the institutions are either broken or corrupt. And he's not a member of the political elite. He wasn't in politics for 47 years like the current incumbent in the White House. He is not part of the quote-unquote political elite that clearly detests our nation and Judeo-Christian civilization. There's a reason that working-class Americans from across the nation voted for him in 2016. There's a reason that recently in Harlem, we saw what? We saw a black 10-year-old child chant out, "We love you, Trump," which was then picked up by all the adults around that young boy, because they see in that man authenticity. He's not a machine career politician. He's not somebody with 21 shell companies funneling money from communist China, Russia, the Ukraine, into his son's dodgy dealings and then into the Biden family. He has authenticity and he loves America. The first time I met him, I've told this story on your show previously, I grew up in the UK. It was a very different culture for me to meet this reality TV star in his, golden tower in New York. But within 30 seconds of sitting down with this man, I realized two things. He loves America and he hates political correctness. That is the antithesis of the political class, whether it's rhino fake Republicans or the institutionalized Democrats. And that's why he's trouncing Biden in every significant poll in America. People see a man who understands America has lost its way. The elite on both sides of the aisle have betrayed American, especially American workers, and we need to fix it. That's why.
And is it really true that like the Biden and the people around him hate America? I mean, isn't that an extraordinary claim to make?
It is. It's kind of perverse. But if you look at everything they've done for
that's gonna be pain.
Answer the question thusly. What else would you do for 3.5 years if your ostensible goal was actually to destroy America? What would you do differently? Nothing. You'd open the borders, you'd give billions of dollars to the greatest state-sponsored terrorism in the world, Iran, that every Friday chants death to America. You'd undermine our relationship with our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, stop sending them the weapons they need to save themselves from the bloodthirsty jihadists that killed more Jews than we've ever seen since the end of the show, at the end of the Holocaust. You'd make it harder for Americans to live their lives. When on the first day of the Biden administration, you ban the XL Keystone Pipeline extension. You say no more fracking, no more energy exploration on federal lands. And what do we have? We go from $1.80 a gallon of petrol to now we have in California $6. When you're a man who lives on how much it costs to put a full tank of gas in your car, if you're a worker, if you're a plumber, if you're a carpenter, you've crushed tens of millions of people. That is only possible if you hate the nation in which you live. Think of this thing. It's set up by one person. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Sebastian. Listen to Biden's former boss. 5 days before he became president, he said, "We are going to fundamentally change this nation." I know you're a married man, Konstantin. Don't tell your wife you want to fundamentally change her because she won't believe you love her. You'll be on the couch or in the doghouse, okay? You don't love that which you wish to fundamentally change, and that's what the left has become.
Well, there you go. I'm getting marital advice as well. Stephen, there's quite a lot there. I'm going to come back to some of the points you made in your opening and let Seb probe them as well, but there was a lot there. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with almost every part. I think that, I don't think Trump loves America. I think it's pretty obvious that Trump loves himself. I think even Trump fans will admit that Trump is more in love with himself than any other individual entity that exists on this planet. I always think it's really funny. I think one of the most interesting things that happened with conservatives is this idea that they found a common man who's not a part of the elite to champion their causes, and it happens to be a billionaire real estate mogul from New York City that was essentially born with a silver spoon. I think that's incredibly interesting. When you talk about, like, I mean, we could go into family stuff. I think it's interesting that people are so critical about Hunter Biden when Kushner is signing multi-billion-dollar deals with Saudi Arabia, when Kushner was working in
Hold on, but that's whataboutism, right? That's not, like, Hunter Biden could be a bad guy and Jared Kushner could be doing whatever you say he's doing. Those are not...
Sure, I'm not. It's not a whataboutism because it's not a defense of Hunter. I think it's more remarking that it's interesting what conservatives that are fans of Trump are selectively skeptical of. That if Biden had created a position in the White House for his son Hunter to work under, and then he had sent his son to go and negotiate on behalf of the United States, and then afterwards his son was signing multi-billion-dollar deals for companies that he worked with, this is like Burisma, but 100 million times worse because it's in the official capacity as a government worker while being related to a president who didn't divest.
I guess all I'm saying, sorry to interject, I really want you to get the time. But I just, that argument could be played the other way. If Donald Trump had a son like Hunter Biden who was doing what Hunter Biden did, everyone on the left would be outraged too, right? So
you could really hear many people on the left talking about Kushner that much, considering how crazy those deals are.
I mean, people have talked about it less. It's true.
Sure. Anyway, whereas for Hunter Biden, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene has pictures of him in Congress. I don't know if you saw that. In terms of, like, what would you do if you wanted to make the country worse? I mean, I can think of several things. I would encourage my supporters to lead an insurrection on the Capitol. I would try to say that the election results weren't real. I would claim that the election was fake before even coming into office, which he did before his first term. I'd probably start to gain notoriety or popularity in the political world by suggesting that the current president was born in Kenya, not the United States. A lot of people forget, but that's how Trump initially picked up his popularity. It was with the birth certificate stuff with Barack Obama. I think that when you talk about like wanting to fundamentally change this country, I don't think Biden wants to do that. I think Biden genuinely loves the United States. I look at somebody like Donald Trump, who undermines basically every single part of this country, whether it's the legal and judicial system, whether it's trust in the voting process, whether it's NATO, whether it's U.S. Impressions or the U.S. reputation abroad. I think that Trump fundamentally has no respect for any part of this country. That's why he suggested suspending the Constitution so that he could look for voter fraud. It's why before getting elected, he said that people that burn the flag are one of our most important First Amendment protected rights, should have their citizenship stripped from them, which is insane. And I would also probably try to undermine the current sitting president and the current sitting Congress by telling them that they're not allowed to get things done on the border, because if we keep that as a real problem, it'll help me in the next election cycle, which is why we weren't able to pass any bipartisan border legislation to actually fix the asylum problem that we have right now, that the current government's hands are tied on.
Ted?
I just, most of that is just absolutely risible. He loves himself more than anything, any other human being on the planet. Yeah, that's why he's facing 730 years in prison right now, because he wants to be president again. He could have just gone off back to his private life, running his businesses, but no, he actually said a few days ago, I'm prepared to go to jail and make that sacrifice any day because the Constitution is more important than my freedom. That sounds like a very selfish individual, absolutely.
Do you not think, though, I think it's a fair critique to say that Donald Trump is narcissistic, and so he would want to go back because he feels that he was badly treated. The reason he didn't get re-elected was the election was stolen, and he wants to show the world that it's a personal ambition project rather than
at the cost of going to prison.
Well, some people want to sacrifice themselves so everyone can see how they've been badly treated because they're so obsessed with, looking
Look,
right.
I'm glad we're so good at psychoanalyzing people from the outside.
Just saying, that's what a lot of people would think.
But let's look at the facts. He wouldn't be where he is today if he wasn't running again. That's just, we know that. This is an attempt to steal an election before any vote is cast. Whether it's the Fannie Willis corrupt prosecutor in Georgia, whether it's the person, Letitia James or Alvin Bragg, funded by George Soros during their campaigns, because sadly we elect these people in America, and who campaigned on putting President Trump in prison. How perverse is that? And with regards to, he did it all for himself, and he did nothing for America or destroyed America. Do you have any idea how much energy costs went up under the Trump administration, just for average families?
The president doesn't influence energy costs that much.
He does when he shuts down fracking and all licenses for oil exploration on federal lands. Don't divert.
U.S. oil production is at an all-time high, so that's
absolutely not true.
It is.
Not true.
It is. We're energy independent right now.
Okay, you're making stuff up. Okay.
People
how
look
much
it up.
how much did energy go up? Do you know under Trump?
Are we counting the last year under COVID when the entire world was slowing down?
Over 4 years, how much did energy go up? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
4%. Do you know how much has gone up in the last 3.5 years under Biden?
I'm not sure.
28%. Who's destroying America?
So, but that's also a global trend. Inflation
but also
isn't just
it's a function of
affects.
what we created. When we were in the Trump administration, for the first time in our history, we were net exporters of energy. Think about what that does for the lifeblood. An economy requires energy. I know it's a scary, evil thing for the left, but oil and gas is how you run an economy. It's how you get food to people. So when we became the first time ever a net exporter, or talk about the other aspects of the economy. We had the lowest unemployment for minorities in the United States since record keeping began, and the lowest unemployment for women for 70 years. Look at what we have today. I mean, it's absolute. The fact that most families in this nation cannot handle a $500 emergency. They don't have $500 worth of cash. That's why Harlem is shouting, "We love you, Trump." I don't know if you saw President Trump after he had to leave the court last week. He delivered pizzas to the firefighters in Manhattan. It's really interesting to watch that video, not just of how he was received by those people who run into fires to save Americans. One of the firefighters actually audibly says in the background, "Save us, Mr. Trump." That doesn't happen if the man's selfish and if the economy's absolutely superb. It happens when you let in 8 million illegals in 3.5 years to crush the working man and woman in America.
Stephen, even as a fair observer, you would have to say, and feel free to come back on the point Seb made as well, but the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue, seems to be much, much worse under President Biden. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we're facing unique issues right now, yeah.
So, why would you want to re-elect a man who has allowed this many illegal immigrants, despite the fact that I think it's fair to say the vast majority of Americans agree that they should?
I think that when it comes to border stuff or immigration stuff, I think that most of the disagreement, I think for America, we generally agree on most things for what the immigration policy should look like. The problem is we have a very unique problem at the border relating to asylum seeking, and the federal government's hands are tied in terms of how we can deal with those people. So with the way that the law works right now, if you're an illegal immigrant and you come up to the border, you see that like the encounters have gone up dramatically. Well, so is the actual catch rate of people coming in. Like, not that many people are sneaking past border guards. The reason why is because you don't have to actually sneak into the country anymore. You just have to show up between a port of entry, or maybe even at a port of entry. Hey, I'm here to seek asylum. And once you've done that, it's like a get out of jail free card. And you're basically, they have to take you in. They have to process you because of how the federal laws on the books are right now. Because we don't have judges to actually look at cases. You're given basically a slip. You're saying, hey, we show up for trial, and then you just some people would try to say that like Biden doesn't catch and release. We have like a catch and release law, but we don't really. It's like a combination of pretty complicated things in the books for how we deal with asylum seekers. Now, Biden and the Democrats in Congress wanted to deal with this, but Trump was literally telling Republicans in Congress, do not touch the border issue. That's why the bipartisan bill, the Republicans had largely approved of a few years earlier, got completely shut down because Republicans don't want to close this issue. Again, in classic Trump fashion, which is putting Trump ahead of the country, he didn't do anything about the border because Trump was telling Republicans not to fix a particular issue because he wants to win the election. That's an issue that Biden and the Democrats tried to solve, but we couldn't do it.
And look, I want to hear Seb's answer to that and other things you're about to say, but I can tell you someone, look, I was born in the former Soviet Union, I don't live in America. I can promise you, this unique set of circumstances that you're talking about, like every other country in the world, pretty much, except Western Europe, is able to have a border, right? You can't just turn up to the border of Russia or China and like walk in and then be like, oh, can I please? That's not how it works. It's not, look, the idea that a country has a border has not been controversial for very long. This is a very new thing, and the fact that the number of people has skyrocketed since President Biden was elected, you can't put that on the Republicans.
I'm not putting anything on the Republicans. What I'm saying is what I'm putting on them is the refusal to fix the actual issue, which is passing legislation to do it. And the last huge bipartisan bill that died in the House was supposed to increase the amount of judges we have to work with asylum seekers. It was supposed to change the standards that we would use to evaluate people claiming asylum, and it would have increased funding basically for every part of the.
Wouldn't it be easier to just erect a physical barrier that prevents people from going into this country except at a port of entry?
No, it wouldn't do anything.
Why not?
This is the frustrating thing, because the issue is what I said. The issue, if you look at the vast majority of people that are coming in, and you talk about things like catch and release, it's asylum seekers. These are laws on the books that have to change. You can go to a border right now as an illegal immigrant and just like, hey, I'm like claiming asylum. Can I come in?
It's nothing to do with laws.
And then that's the issue that you have trying to deal with our current immigration issue is the asylum seeking process. And you say that like, well, other countries have borders and they don't have to deal with this. When the Syrian refugee crisis happened, I'm sure you remember, it was probably a big motivating factor for Brexit, even if it was in the background. There were tons of refugees that were coming here, and there was a huge crisis. You saw a lot of right-wing parties gain popularity because of how unhappy people were. In Sweden, you still got residual issues relating to those immigrants. You had the AfD rising in popularity in Germany. You had Marine Le Pen becoming popular again in France.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But the problem is that all of those decisions about letting those people in, they were political decisions. And that's why people are frustrated, because the decision to allow 1 million refugees into Germany was a political decision, after which Angela Merkel admitted that multiculturalism doesn't work. It's not like the countries failed to have a border, it's that the politicians choose to create a situation where millions of people flood into the
I agree,
States.
but that's the choice that Trump and the Republicans have made right now when we've said, hey, we can change this with bipartisan infrastructure, or bipartisan immigration legislation. It was on the books, it wasn't on the books, it was a bill, it was already passed, it would have addressed all of these issues, but Trump told Republicans, do not pass this bill. I knew this as an election issue, and he didn't, even though this bill had, the Republican that go off of this, but this is like basically a Republican offer.
I want to give you more time on that other point.
Oh, I will say one also, just so
please,
once we get.
We're truly honored to be partnered with Monk Debates, a place where the world's leading thinkers debate the most pressing issues of our time. The next Monk debate is one I promise you will not want to miss. The motion is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? On June 17, British commentator and trigonometry favourite Douglas Murray and international legal expert Natasha Ausberg will debate former MSNBC anchor Mehdi Hassan and Israeli journalist and critic Gideon Levy. To find out how to become a member and watch the debate live, go to www.monkdebates.com. And now, on with the show.
Conservatives love to bring up the lowest unemployment for minorities under Trump and blah, blah, blah. We have the lowest unemployment for minorities right now under Biden. The idea that you would look at unemployment and use that as like a win for Trump, when unemployment under Biden has been the lowest that it has been in all of U.S. history, and it's after rebuilding an economy, not like soaring ahead of like historically low interest rates year after year after year, which kind of led into a lot of the issues that we've experienced with inflation and having to tighten up and everything. The economy under Biden has done exceedingly well. It would be nice if we had a Democrat come into office that was trying to clean up the mess of the last conservative. We had Obama come in after the end of Bush's presidency, which was the 2007 housing crisis, which was like an international financial issue. And then we had Biden come in after Trump's horrible mishandling of COVID. It would be nice if we could actually get a Democrat to come in and run a clean 4 years instead of cleaning up the mess of the last conservative and then still trying to compete on things.
Seb, obviously you heard my objections about immigration, and I think they're fair, certainly from my perspective. But the one thing I have also heard, including from many Republicans who might be mutual friends of ours, or people who are high up in the Republican Party, is that Donald Trump is playing politics with these issues right now in order that he has a better chance of winning. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. Let's talk about this canard that the left wants to fix this, and they had legislation that a rhino, a fake conservative, sponsored in the Senate. The legislation stated that if you sign this into law, you will allow at least 5,000 illegals into America every 24 hours. Of course, we're going to say that's garbage, that's insanity. The idea that they, in good faith, want to fix this. Let's just look. In preparation for today, I called up the former Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, and I asked him, what is the situation like? Let's just talk about one statistic, because 8 million illegals, it's hard to even fathom. In the last 3.5 years, they have introduced 47,000 felons at the border. These are criminals coming into America. That is a 99% increase over our 4 years in government. Let's just say 100%. Besides that, they found 160,000 felons, convicted felons, in America, including 4,700 murderers and 8,000 gang members, one of whom murdered a beautiful 22-year-old nursing student called Laken Riley in Georgia. A man who murdered her after he was asyleed into America by Joe Biden's system, was then arrested for endangerment of a minor in New York, and Alvin Bragg, the Democrat, DA, let him on custody so he could murder this 22-year-old. Let's be clear. They created this. You're right. It's policy decisions. My parents were real refugees, real asylum seekers. Because if my dad had gone back to the land of his birth as an escaped prisoner from a communist prison, he would have been shot on sight. You can't say 8 million political prisoners are coming across the border into America. Let's just use the stats of the left. The United Nations, hardly a card MAGA entity. Human Rights Watch, not exactly America First. What have these organizations stated about the deluge, the invasion of illegals across our border under Biden? Between 50 and 60% of the girls and the women are being raped or sexually assaulted by the human traffickers. It is absolutely empirical statement of fact that Joe Biden has become the largest human trafficker in human history. The party of...
Come on.
No.
Come on. He's not...
Numerically.
Come on.
Numerically.
No, that's not what I'm disputing. I'm disputing the idea that he is a human trafficker.
Totally. His policies.
It's happening under his watch.
It's his decision. His decision.
No, hold on. He's not a human trafficker.
He is.
That's ridiculous.
His policies have made his government empirically, you can't argue with 12,000 illegals a day. 12,000!
To call someone a human trafficker and
No,
what they're doing on purpose.
they are doing it on purpose. I'll tell you why. Because they are so bigoted and so racist. Remember, this is the Democrat Party, part of the KKK, the party of the Jim Crow laws. This is the party that whose activist murdered the first Republican president, Lincoln, the great emancipator. This is the DNA of the Democrats. The Democrats are so fundamentally bigoted. They believe if we let in millions of illegals because they're brown skinned, because they're black skinned, when we amnesty them, naturalization and citizenship, they will vote for us because of their skin color. This is CRT at its core, critical race theory, and that's why they're doing it. This isn't an accident. You don't open the borders an accident. You know that. And this isn't because of humanitarian stuff. Let's talk about why it's technical, why he is the largest.
Finish the point and I want to say something.
How do these people come into America? Do you know what CBP1 is? CBP1 is the app that illegals download on their way to America. It's funded by you and me, the American taxpayers. They're sitting in Mexico. They're sitting in the Dominican Republic. They're sitting in Afghanistan. And they download an app where they pre-clear themselves. You tick a box. I am Mickey Mouse and I'm an asylum seeker. When you cross the border, you say, hey, I'm registered, and you're let into America. That's deliberate, Constantine. That's not accidental, that's deliberate. And these people are political refugees.
Okay. Why didn't you build a wall when you had the chance?
We tried to, and we were stymied consistent. You know what President Trump had to do? This is the insanity. The protestations from the establishment were hysterical. We had to repurpose DOD funds and say, the border is actually a national security issue. We've got terrorists coming across the border. We have to repurpose national security funds to build the border and buy the steel to build the wall. And that took us over a year. What does Joe Biden do? He comes into the administration, and the steel members that we had bought to secure the border, he sold them for scrap iron. That's why it's deliberate, and that's why he's a human trafficker.
The talking points are funny. I think it's really funny. I think if you're listening to this in video form, I think you should rewind because Seb accidentally gave away part of the plot. It's funny because you described that border bill and you said it allows 5,000 illegal immigrants to come today. Minimum? Wrong. That was the maximum cap.
No.
One of the issues that we face, I did read it. Let me finish. I did read it. You should read it as well. No, I did read it. And it's funny because what you said later on was that we were seeing numbers sometimes in excess of 12,000 per day. The reason why that bill was so important, one of the things that would have been nice is it would have actually placed a cap on the amount of people that were coming in and claiming asylum. That 5,000 per day would have said that once we hit this cap, we are not processing anybody else. You could have the most legitimate asylum claim in the world, and we would not allow you into this country, which was already about to be challenged by a ton of legal people around the United States. And I think there were international bodies as well, because whether or not you can cap asylum seekers is still an internationally debated topic, but that is what that legislation seeks to do. If you feel, again, so passionately about the border, why didn't we pass any bipartisan infrastructure or bipartisan immigration legislation? Why did we shut it down? You can say that, but you did. If you really truly believe that the other side is at fault, then it seems like you need a candidate besides Trump, because Trump wasn't able to get anything done when he was president. You just said it yourself that Trump had to repurpose DOD funds to do it. Trump had a larger margin in Congress. Trump had all three branches of government and accomplished less than Biden did when it came to legislation, when it came to the border, when it came to infrastructure, when it came to foreign policy, when it came to almost every single aspect of running this country. And Trump was the one that came in saying, I'm the business guy. I can bring people together. I can get these things done because I know how to get people to work together. And all I hear from people once Trump left office is, well, the deep state got me, and it was the other guys, and I couldn't do anything, and I had to take money from the DOD to do it. I couldn't figure anything out, and blah blah blah. And now that he's out of office, supposedly running for America, despite the fact that what he's really running for is so that he can pardon himself from his crimes and be immune from hopefully state charges. What he's really running for, is to save himself, and that's why he care about the border. That's why he tries to continue the border problems. He wasn't able to fix it when he was in office because he was more concerned with his reputation than actually bringing people together to get things done. I don't understand how, even if you believe everything that you said, that asylum seeking is an issue, that illegal immigration is an issue, even if you believe that these are issues that are brought by Democrats intentionally and they're destroying the country, which are all ridiculous claims, Donald Trump is not the guy to fix them because he already proved that he couldn't do it once.
All right, so we can go back and forth saying, I read this, I read that. Look it up for yourselves. Everybody can do that. I just want to be common sense. Does anybody has to say, yeah, the Democrats are strong on the border and immigration, and Trump isn't? I mean, it beggars belief. It's risible.
That's one of the weaker points that he made, but I think a very strong point that he made right at the end, and one I'd like to hear you answer is, Donald Trump, you say, didn't build the wall because there was a lack of support from the other side. They were not acting in good faith. Okay. Well, you think there's going to be more good faith after he gets elected, let's say, in 2024?
Right. I'm not sure it's the good faith that's the problem. He seems to paint President Trump.
No, you said this earlier.
No, but let me just unpack it
Yeah.
in terms of what's possible and what isn't. I said this when I was in the White House. I said it after I left the White House. Donald Trump won the election despite the GOP, thanks to the GOP. I mean, this is the oddity. I mean, this is what Americans forget. I find it funny that I have to, remind Americans who are born here, unlike me, a legal immigrant, that Donald Trump, the American people did something utterly historic in 2016. Because prior to that, every chief executive, from George Washington to Obama, was from the same class. They were either senators, congressmen, governors, or retired four-star generals. Every single one, from George Washington to Obama.
I definitely know.
What did the American people do in 2016? They say, we've had it with the swamp, the establishment, the rhinos, the Democrats. They elect a man who's never run for any office, a county dog catcher, a guy who has no political background, and they say, F you to the establishment, we want him. That's actually historic. Now, that's what the president had to compete with. When we walked into the White House on January 21st, I said this publicly back then, there were less than 20 of us in senior positions like myself who were actually America First and MAGA, right? Because it was an insurgency, a political insurgency. The establishment hated President Trump. We had people inside the building who were actively subverting him, even his former chief of staff. That will not happen in a second Trump administration because the president understands what Reagan taught us. Personnel is policy. We can't have, people betraying the will of the American voter inside the wire, inside the building. It's more than just, oh, well, he didn't pass legislation. He actively had people who believe in the footsie under the table with the other side. I'll get my cushy, lobbyist job after I leave Congress. That's changed in the last 8 years. The Republican Party now is MAGA, is America First. There's a few holdouts and rhinos who are leaving like Mitt Romney, but the situation for getting even more stuff fixed is much brighter than it was when we walked in 2016.
Stephen?
What I
Anything
did
you wanna
not like.
Populism usually takes a pretty predictable route where people are frustrated with a set of circumstances, which, to be fair, there's a lot of things to be frustrated about. And what you do is you turn to a strong man who promises to deliver you from all of your evils, to deliver you from the pain and the suffering of whatever around you, because he's the one source of truth, the one source of goodness, the one guy that can get the job done. That's what Donald Trump sold himself as when he came into office, and like every populist, he came in, he overpromised, and he underdelivered. Trump failed on every single conceivable metric when it came to being a president, besides, and I will admit, he is very funny. He's very funny, he's got good stage presence, and he can work a crowd. That's why the nicest thing...
The economy was pretty good during his period until COVID hit.
The economy was good, but I mean, like, you can Google markets, you can look at indicators, like everything had been hitting all-time highs since 2013 under Obama, right? Ever since the economy crashed after 2007 and started to recover, that same recovery happened under Trump. And it was happening with pretty low interest rates, and it was just a carry on from Obama's administration. People will say, well, the economy was really good under Trump. What did Trump even do? He did a bunch of tax cuts and that's it. He didn't really do much else.
Hold on.
And then as a quick thing again, I'm sorry, but my managerial experience in the ordinary world, outside of the YouTube world I live in now, is limited. But I was a supervisor in a restaurant. If I was given a shift and all my tables were dirty, and my manager comes in and she sees my restaurant, it's my ass. I'm in trouble. I can't say like, well, these employees were working against me and these guys didn't show up and these guys didn't call in. She said, okay, well, you're getting paid the big bucks. It's your responsibility. You're the leader there, right? When Trump was coming into office, because I am an ardent capitalist, the only redeeming quality I saw was, well, okay, he is a business guy. So at the very least, maybe he's got some comprehension in terms of how to get people with different opinions to actually work together. And he is the most divisive leader in like all of U.S. history, or at least in recent U.S. history. The idea that, even his former chief of staff was against him, like that's a point in favor of Trump. These are your people. You're nominated. How is it that every person that's worked with him, how is it that his former attorney generals, his chiefs of staff, his personal friends, his personal lawyers, when you have this many people around you that are saying to the rest of the world, don't trust this guy. This guy is no good. I don't work with him anymore. I don't trust this guy anymore. Like, at what point do you look at him and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not actually the deep state, every single institution, all of the media, all of the world, all of academia, and all of the politicians against him. Maybe it's just kind of like a bad person who's not very good at getting his job done.
It's like you live in an alternate universe. I know you're on YouTube and that those are your qualifications. But
We're all on YouTube, Seb.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I've been banned. I've been banned on YouTube, right? So, I take that as a mark of honor. I'm on Rumble. So this idea that he failed at everything. Yeah, that's a great description of Joe Biden, from mortgage rates to inflation to the price of energy to surrendering in Kabul to the invasion of Ukraine to October the 7th. Yeah, massive successes in the last 3.5 years. Let's talk about my bailiwick. Let's talk about national security. We had been told by our predecessor, Obama, that ISIS, quote, is a threat we just have to get to learn to live with. Can't be solved, just going to live with it. When we came into the White House, President Trump got the lawyers out of the way and unleashed JSOC and Delta Force. Within 5 months, the caliphate of ISIS was gone, kaput. China, we initiated a trade war with China. We facilitated the rise of NATO to such an extent that under President Trump's presidency, defense spending shot up by $400 billion inside NATO. The guy
I will have to give him that
actually saved it. Then we look at, the Middle East, 5 peace accords in less than 4 years. These are meant to be failures for us. Let's look at the international environment. Under Obama, Ukraine, Crimea, taken. Under Biden, again, a second invasion, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians dead. The largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust in Israel, and then the absolute surrender and betrayal of the Afghan people in a withdrawal that made Saigon look like a small incident. These are supposed to be the successes. And as to this, he's the most divisive. It's so peculiar, but I find it incapable, I find it impossible to remember my former boss giving speeches in front of iconic locales such as Independence Hall in Philadelphia, bathed in red fascistic light, with Marines standing flanking him, labeling half of America extremists and fascists, and preaching to us about white supremacy in his State of the Union address. That really brings us together. This is the man who told us, Biden said on his inauguration, I'm going to bring you together by calling half the nation white supremacists, when the real racist problem in America are the Democrats on the campuses saying death to America, from the river to the sea if you're Jewish. That's the left today. Radicals who hate America. I go back to my original point. And then this strange idea of populism, using this label as a smear, some kind of pejorative. I don't know. I remember the good old days where if you had the popular support of the people, that was a good thing. I don't like the elites. They stink. They're corrupt. But a guy comes along who has popular support. No, the elites will decide. Just like Sam Harris destroyed himself on your podcast when he said, I don't care if Hunter Biden had dead children in his basement. The plot against Donald Trump and the election in 2020 was, quote, justified. That's the left. That's the other side. Those are the divisive people.
I want to talk about a couple of things you raised there, which is foreign policy, geopolitics, etc., and also what's happening on college campuses, Stephen, as well. I would like you, before I go back to Stephen, to address you the one point that he made, which I think is worth exploring,
Okay,
which is
I'm gonna start a
we say this guy
campaign.
knows how to get things done, and you say you had all these people in the White House and elsewhere who were working.
I do enjoy the mod.
What about what Stephen said, which
Right.
is he just seems like an asshole that annoys everyone, and people can't work with him?
Well, look, I've said it many times before. It is absolutely remarkable what he achieved in really not 4 years, 2 years, despite the people who are subverting him because they represent the elite class.
What were those achievements again? Just,
The strongest economy we've ever had, lowest unemployment.
no, like things
Hispanics.
he's done, not things that happened.
What do you mean? What's the difference?
So, like, if I stand outside and a tree grows, I wouldn't say that I grew the tree.
Oh yeah,
if I
you
planted
said
the seeds
he
for the
did,
tree,
he
I would
did
say,
nothing
yeah.
in regards
So I
to
was
the
just curious,
economy.
like, what are
Yeah,
things
I'll
he's
give
done?
you the example. You said
Okay.
he did nothing with.
I said he did tax cuts.
Not his responsibility. When we came into the White House, the president had a modest goal. He said, "I've had it with the growth of the state." You know, the burden on the average American. 60% of businesses are small businesses in America. I want to get the monkey off the back of the guy who has the family company. So what did he do? He said, I'm not going to sign any executive orders as president unless for every one I sign, 2 are rescinded. I want to have a redress of the balance, the abuse of executive power. We said, okay, sir, by not the end of the first year, by the 10th month of the first year, that figure wasn't 2 to 1. The figure was 22 to 1. We had rescinded 22 executive orders for every new one the president signed. That's how you unleash the economy. And that's exactly what happened. When you allow federal government lands to be used for energy exploration, when you say, yes, XL Keystone Pipeline, when you block Russia's Nord Stream, that's when you unleash the American people. And that's on President Trump.
Let's just finish this point, Seb, which is about the fact that Donald Trump is not able to lead the country well because he's not able to bring enough people with him to buy into his vision, and instead you had constant turmoil internally. And it's not just rhinos who were leaving, it was people like Steve Bannon.
No, he didn't leave. He was fired by the chief of staff, who was an actual seditionist, right? John Kelly fired him. Steve didn't want to go.
So why didn't Donald Trump overrule him and say, this is my guy?
Because he trusted Kelly. This is a 4-star general, right? This is a guy who was in the Marine Corps. Sadly, he didn't know. He didn't have budgets. But now, after the last 7 years, let me assure you, because this is my #1 concern, and I've discussed it with the president, he knows who to trust, and he knows who not to trust. Therefore, he will achieve even more, God willing, if we re-elect him in November.
All right, Stephen, go for it. We'll do a few minutes with you, and then I want to move on to geopolitics. What's
I can
happening on
incorporate that
campuses.
even.
Yeah.
The idea that Trump, a billionaire real estate developer, didn't have friends in the swamp, which is very funny to me.
In the political
wasn't this
swamp.
guy? Wasn't he literally in pictures at Hillary and Bill Clinton's wedding? I mean, like the idea
What?
that
You're living in
the
Manhattan.
idea that
that doesn't mean
that
you're running a political campaign.
have the
He's a
connections.
realtor.
Yeah,
He's a
billionaire
realtor.
realtor.
Has never run anything in government. How would you know who the good bureaucrat is and the crappy one like Fauci? How would you know that? You're building real estate.
Is real estate.
Do you know a lot? You're in media. Do you know how to create a cable TV show?
I know a decent amount about.
No, do you know
I
how
know
to
a decent
create
bit about
right now?
real estate. And I know that real estate is one of the most tax-advantaged things. I know
Yes,
that real estate
but-
has some of the highest
So
integrations with city
does
council
that mean
planners,
he
with
knows
policies,
who the
with.
Secretary of Defense should be? It's
Well,
absurd.
if he doesn't have any of these ideas, then you're making a very strong argument for career politicians. This is why people tend to do politics, stay in politics, is because they're actually able to know these things.
Yeah,
they
we need
understand these
more
things. They have these
elitists. We
relations.
need more of them, Steve.
Well, considering
More.
that Trump, again, failed in every conceivable metric, and you weren't able to give me like any strong things that he actually
just listed
succeeded
them.
in.
Seb, hold on. Let
You
him
said
talk.
that he rescinded executive orders. Like, that is a measurable increase. Give me something like the CHIPS Act. Give
Do
me
you not
something
think that
like.
matters, though? I mean, for the people who want to reduce the size of government, that would
It's
be
a
a thing.
lip service thing. I would encourage
Okay.
everybody that hears. There's 2 lines that people. There's one really common line that politicians always say. It's politispeak, which is funny that Trump utilized it. But it's this: I'm going to go line by line through the budget. I'm going to go line by line, and I'm going to get rid of all wasteful spending. First of all, this is just fiscal stuff, okay? This impacts your budget, which, by the way, Trump ran record deficits when he was in office, so budgetarily he still failed, but this doesn't improve your economy or unleash your economy. It's not like we were rescinding significant executive orders that was destroying our ability to actually succeed. If anything, I would say the most successful business that we had growing in the United States were our tech companies that Republicans are constantly trying to undermine and destroy by getting rid of Section 230, which would make it so you could sue Twitter when somebody posts something on Twitter that I don't like. So no, the idea that Trump was unleashing the economy by rescinding some irrelevant executive orders that had no impact on the economy anyway, and the fact that he was still running these record level deficits, even though the economy was exploding all 3 years at least under his presidency, is ridiculous. Oh man, if we want to go foreign policy, Jesus, almost every single decision that Trump made under foreign policy was either a form of taking down the road or it just did nothing. We talk about like the historic stuff that happened with the Abraham Accords. I'm sorry, the Abraham Accords started because Netanyahu was on the verge of annexing the West Bank, and the Gulf states were like, this is probably not a good idea. A lot of people are going to be mad. And then Kushner hopped in, and there were official conversations that were essentially facilitated. And then eventually you start getting these bilateral treaties that are signed between the two countries. But these bilateral treaties did something very important that's happened with other treaties, and that is that they undermined the Palestinians. They didn't include them in any of the conversations. So when you look at what happened on October 7th, and then you look at Biden, you go, man, this must be Biden's fault. It's like, okay, well, didn't we just have a historic round of talks with countries in the Middle East? How is it that the Palestinians were excluded yet again from these talks? You know, and the idea that Trump was some strong partner in the Middle East when in 2019, Iran literally was shooting drones and missiles over into Saudi Arabian refineries, and the United States stood by and did nothing. Or the idea that we're going to stand here and we're going to say, oh my God, in Afghanistan, we held out and we abandoned our people. One, that timetable was sent by Donald Trump. He had a round of talks called the Doha talks that happened with the Taliban, and the Afghanistan government was completely excluded from those talks. When Biden came into office, we'd already been drawn down to historically low numbers in Afghanistan. We had almost no military presence left over there. When Biden came into office, basically the only thing left to do was to follow Trump's title, which was to pull us out of Afghanistan.
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
Just on that particular thing, didn't you just say that if you're managing comes in and sees a messy table, that's just you? And yet in this situation, you're saying it's Donald Trump's fault, even though it's Joe Biden that did it.
It's not. If you take over a new...
I'm just trying to be fair.
No, that's fine. That's a good question. If you take over a restaurant and you're the manager of the restaurant business, and somebody comes in and they say, hey, I'm going to sit here with me and 20 friends, okay, because that's what we're going to do. And I go, well, no, that's bullshit. And they go, well, actually, you bought this restaurant and we signed a contract with your last boss that gave us the right to do this for a year. Well, if you buy a business, generally you also inherit, along with the assets and liabilities, prior agreements you've signed as well, or the previous owner did. With the Doha agreements, we were on a timetable to leave. Now, could Biden have increased the troop presence and fought against that withdrawal? He could have, but then at what cost? Remember, it only takes 2 attacks against U.S. soldiers by the Taliban to have the United States thinking like, well, shoot, do we need to stay there for another 10 or 20 years? I agree that the pullout could have gone better. I think that there were people that should have had the opportunity to work with us, that should have come out, that didn't get that opportunity. But like compare that to say, because remember, this is done under a Trump timetable. What is Trump's excuse for abandoning the Kurds that we fought alongside in Syria to a Turkish onslaught? There was no excuse for that. There was no reason for that. But he did that with, I don't even know, because he said, well, I don't want to be in the Middle East anymore. And then he obscured all the information relating to Yemen drone strikes that we were helping Saudi Arabia with, as opposed to Biden, who said we're no longer going to participate in the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, which was, I think, improvement. We axed the Iranian nuclear deal, and we replaced it with nothing. I guess ostensibly that's supposed to keep Iran from receiving nuclear weapons. We had historic photographs taken with Kim and our leaders for nothing, I guess. I've heard Sebastian claim in the past that they stopped ballistic missile testing. That's not true. That you can literally go on the Wikipedia and read test after the dates. Pence and I believe Tillerson were both complaining about those talks because literally nothing got done in North Korea.
I just did not handle this well, my poor German soldiers. I'm sorry.
Policy, it was a disaster.
Well, let me give you a narrative that is popular with people who probably don't agree with you, which is that the main thing about Donald Trump is that people around the world, and I can tell you this is true.
I think I can admit when I've
feared
been
and
here.
respected him. They didn't like him necessarily, but they feared and respected him. And the fact that you have
invested poorly.
people from Gaza committing October 7th, the fact that Putin felt able to invade Ukraine, the fact that China is getting more muscular on Taiwan. This is a sign of the perceived weakness of the United States under Joe Biden. And you can take that at whatever level you want, all the way through to sitting down across from Joe Biden and going, this guy can't finish a sentence.
If we want to say that the United States has a weak foreign disposition right now, I think I would probably agree with that.
Okay.
But I don't think it's because of Biden. I think it's because of how divided we are internally. And I think when you look at a country and you see that they're like fighting with themselves, like okay, well, let's come over here.
I wrote a whole book about that, so I definitely agree with you.
Because like when I look at any of these particular issues, and it's easy to kind of like paint a story, and just like name some things, and you don't really dig
helped,
into
and
them.
he definitely
Like we talk about Iran,
been
right?
a
And we
little
say,
bit
well,
more
October 7th, Iran was bold enough to do foreign
proactive
training
in
for
certain
troops in Hamas. Okay, well, Iran physically, literally attacked Saudi Arabia under Donald Trump, and nothing happened. So why would we imagine that they wouldn't back Hamas as well? It's not like Trump destroyed.
It's not about imagination.
It's like getting
it
out of
didn't
Ukraine.
happen when
Well, no, it did. That
Donald
attack
Trump-
did. Iran attacked Saudi Arabia,
Yes,
and Trump didn't
but
have
October
which is
7th,
bolder than
October
October.
7th didn't happen.
Sure, but from an Iranian perspective, that attack was bolder than October 7th.
What
because that
about
was directly
Ukraine, etc.?
Yeah, for Ukraine, Donald Trump didn't like. The Crimean Peninsula was inhabited by Russian troops the entire time. Donald Trump didn't do anything to stop that. Donald Trump didn't care about that. It's not like
Well,
Putin
no,
pulled
hold on.
anything out of there.
But
Yeah.
let me just do this bit.
Yeah.
That's a bit different though, Stephen, because in 2014, as Seb said correctly, under Obama, Russia took Ukraine and started a civil war in eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
Steve wanted us to invade.
To
I get it, I get
recapture
it.
Crimea at that point would have meant literally World War III. So nobody could have retaken Ukraine. It's not like Joe Biden's position when he was elected was we're going to help Ukraine retake Crimea.
Yeah.
So what I'm putting to you, and I think it's a fair question, isn't it the weakness of the withdrawal from Afghanistan? I think we'd both agree was calamitous. Whoever's fault it was, that's where the debate was. Signaled weakness to other people who wanted to capitalize on that. Yes, I agree with you, the internal divisions in America contribute to that. But ultimately, isn't a large part of this the signaling of weakness that invites challenge?
No, because again, I would say, pointing to Ukraine, it's not like Russia stopped their military activity in Ukraine because of Trump being in office. The invasion just hadn't escalated yet to where they were doing a full-on actual on-the-ground military invasion instead of the more surveillance that they were doing in the yeah.
Under Trump, post the 2014 taking of Crimea, and once the Minsk Accords were in place, there was no hot war going on in Ukraine.
There was still the civil war in the southeast. That war has been raging for like 10 years. The conflict, you think there was a total didn't those Minsk agreements last for like months? Minsk 1 and 2?
No, look, I have a lot of family in Ukraine, it's a region I understand very well. Post the Minsk Accords, there was no hot war going on.
For how long?
Well, until the invasion, basically. Until the invasion. It was pretty stable. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't the occasional people, but it was broadly, there was a ceasefire in place. People were not killing each other en masse. I can tell you.
I'd have to go and I would look that up.
He's out of his depth.
Out of my depth. Okay. I mean, we can focus
That's
on it
rude.
if you want. But I don't think that. I mean, Trump. We talk about NATO. I think that Trump was constantly like NATO skeptic on the international level. I think a lot of people expressed a lot of fear for that.
Well, he wanted other nations within NATO to contribute their fair share.
Yeah, their military percentage of GDP
which
funding,
they were not doing,
Which I
and
do
he was
think is a
saying we
fair
can't
request.
continue with NATO if America is the only country that's actually paying its way.
Sure, but the idea that the leader of NATO would be publicly undermining NATO and saying we might have to pull out or stop it, people don't. I think there are more diplomatic ways to pursue those conversations.
He never ever once said he was going to pull out forces. You just make stuff up, Stephen. You've got to stop it. Like there was hot fighting
focus
in
on the
Ukraine.
issue. Come on.
No. This is important.
Give us the facts.
Because this is
an area where you can win if you want.
Tactics.
So give us the facts.
This is tactics. He just floods the zone with stuff that's false.
Let's address
Let's
this
talk about it.
We can go
Let's
claim
talk
by
about
claim
it.
if you want.
Well, that's what I'd like Seb to do. That's what I'd like Seb to do.
When we were in the White House, and you know this, as opposed to what Obama did, Obama, after the invasion of Crimea, the jewel of Ukraine stolen, what did Obama do? He sent blankets and night vision devices. If you don't believe me, look it up. Blankets and night vision devices. When we came in, I don't understand this. Stephen's positing that we should have invaded.
I've never said that.
Oh, well, there was land in Ukraine that the Russians controlled, and Trump didn't do anything about it. You want intervention? I didn't know you were a neocon, Steve.
Did I say
when
that?
we got into the White House,
did I say that we should invade anybody?
You said that Trump did nothing about the land taken by Russia.
I said that Russia didn't run away from Crimea. They didn't fear.
And you
Russia
said
doesn't fear
the
Trump.
operations were continuing. Garbage. There were no military operations in Crimea, in Ukraine, or
Crimea
on the border.
was captured. The whole thing is a military
You
operation.
said there were no military.
Yeah, but they didn't advance.
You're just making stuff up. When we came into the White House, we deployed Javelin, shoulder-launched anti-tank weapons to Ukraine, so they could.
I don't think what we were doing from that perspective made any difference to Russia, though.
Nothing. The idea that, I'm going to kind of explain away what happened in Afghanistan. Let's break Afghanistan down for a second. Yes, there was a timetable for President Trump, but it was conditions-based. If the Taliban hadn't met those conditions, there would have been no withdrawal. I was part of those negotiations. Let me tell you, there would have been no withdrawal without those conditions having been met. Instead, because he wants a photo op for the anniversary of 9/11, I mean, what a cynical. Biden wants an anniversary, 20th anniversary photo op that I won the war in Afghanistan. So 13 of our servicemen are murdered by ISIS at Kabul airport. Thousands of Afghans, also our interpreters, are left. You see a plane take off with hundreds of people hanging on the fuselage. And how do they leave? We're going to get the military out, and then we'll somehow get out the civilians. The rank dilettantism for the photo op, that you don't even leave from Bagram, which is a military air base you can actually defend. You go to KIA in Kabul, indefensible, and you have a complete circus, well, not a circus, a tragedy of a surrender. And then Putin goes, okay, lads, rev your engines. We're going to invade Ukraine.
There's no... I just feel like there's not much defending that.
Hundreds of Jews on Israeli soil. That's on Biden.
And so let me put an argument.
I'm curious for that. What were the conditions based for that Afghanistan agreement? For the Doha agreement? What are the conditions that you feel like the Taliban... Name a couple. What were some of the conditions you feel like...
Control of Wardak province had to be stabilized. We had to have Herat have less Iranian influence. I'm not going to go into any more details because they're classified, Stephen.
Okay. What you're saying is just not true.
One of
the big reasons why that pullout was so catastrophic is because the Afghanistan army wasn't. You can read all this. There was a huge report that was done by the United States analyzing the failures for why that fell so fast. And part of it was because the United States had negotiated away some of the land that was previously controlled by the Afghanistan government to the Taliban. We didn't even tell the Taliban about that. So the Taliban would roll into cities and say, by the way, we agreed to this, and the United States said we could have this. And at some point, the Afghanistan army was like, screw this, and they just started to end whole retreat and from these areas. So, but
let me put a challenge to you, Seb. You mentioned giving javelins to the Ukrainians, etc. I mean, as you well know, and by the way, it's interesting that even though we're all three from different kind of ways of seeing the world, actually on Ukraine, there's quite a lot of agreement in this room, ironically. But there are a lot of people on your side who have bought this idea that this is Ukraine, the reason the war in Ukraine happened is that Russia was provoked. It was provoked by the expansion of NATO. It was provoked by the giving of weaponry to Ukraine. So what would you say to the people who say, well, yeah, Donald Trump gave stuff to the Ukrainians and that's why Russia invaded?
I don't think we need to go down, a kind of a rabbit hole on this. You know my stance. There's me, Dennis Prager, and Klavan and Mark Levin. That's about the three conservatives who are strong on Ukraine. We reject the Tuckerite isolationism, the neo-Buchananite isolationism. But the whole, you're the expert. You're the guy who translates Putin's speeches immediately when they're given. This hoary canard that we encircled Russia, or that U.S. presidents have provoked this great champion of Western, Christendom called Vladimir Putin is asinine. I mean, you know better than anyone. For 22 years since he became premier, Vladimir Putin has been giving speeches on the fact that Ukraine, Poland, the Baltic states are all legitimate and need to be parts of Russia. He's been planning this ever since he, walked into the palace in Moscow.
Can I ask a personal question? I'm curious. Or not personal, personal politics.
Rough.
Last year,
Sorry.
I was introduced to Monetary Metals, a game-changing platform that offers a unique approach to saving and earning income. And I have to
Let's
say,
switch
I've been
games.
so impressed that I'm really enjoying using my Monetary Metals account.
If you listen
Came from Cuba, and my mom and dad were in the Air Force. When I grew up, my parents hated China and Russia for understandable reasons. My mom flew on the Looking Glass mission, looking for basically nuclear missiles, doomsday, end of the world type stuff. And yeah, the fall of the Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain was a monumentous thing in the world. And it sounds like you have similar feelings about Russia, which I'm happy to hear. Does it bother you, or does it give you pause that so many fans under Donald Trump, that so many of the people that support him seem to be so either skeptical about supporting Ukraine or fallen in support of Russia because they see them as a stronger, better country that champions Christian values better or doesn't submit to the woke mob better, and that maybe it is their right to own Ukraine and the U.S.